The courtroom fell silent. Cameras snapped from the back of the room, but no one was brave enough to breathe. One white envelope rested on the judge's bench, unmarked, plain, yet strong enough to ruin all the Brown family had built over decades. Sometimes, the judge spoke quietly. The truth doesn't just set you free, it burns everything around you. And that's when it went down. Kody Brown, the once untouchable pillar of a plural family, stood there frozen, his eyes fixed on that envelope as if it were a bomb ready to explode. Within were the DNA test results that would confirm, once and for all, whether the tales, the devotion, the passion, were ever true. You could practically smell the history in that room. The television cameras that used to track their smiles, the fans that believed in their synergy, and the unspoken agony that had always resided just out of frame. One sheet of paper, one truth, and one admission that no one, not even TLC, wanted the world to know. I didn't want them to find out this way, Kody finally said, his voice cracking through the tension like glass under pressure. What came next would ripple through every corner of their lives. Through Christine's quiet strength, Meri's heartbreak, Robin's guilt, and Janelle's disbelief. Stay with me, because what happens next was never meant to leave that courtroom. This is the tale of the DNA test that destroyed the Brown family and uncovered a reality no TV show could have dreamed up. Would you forgive a lie that took 30 years to grow? Before that envelope ever arrived in court, the fissures in Kody Brown's world had already started to appear. It didn't happen overnight. The collapse of the Brown family started in minutes so subtle, most individuals overlooked them. A sideways glance, a suspended sentence, a silence in the dining room. For years, the cameras had depicted an image of togetherness, love, and religious devotion. But behind each episode, behind each family photograph, there existed a storm brewing silently. Kody Brown had been convinced that he could keep four worlds in balance. Meri, Janelle, Christine, and Robin. 4 wives, 4 homes, 4 vows. He was the hub of the wheel, until the day he wasn't. The program was already showing signs of a tarnish. Christine's laughter grew brittle, Janelle's tolerance grew thin, and Meri, she just disappeared into the background, clinging to a dream that no longer resembled love. But what nobody beyond the family was aware of was that questions regarding allegiance, and even blood, began years ago, long before the filming ceased. Rumors, whispers, small discrepancies that fans dismissed as editor tricks. Until one day, one person within the family quietly requested, "Perhaps it is time we establish the truth. Hold with me here, because this is where the story turns from being about television and begins to become about life." The plea became paperwork. Paperwork became legal filings. And before anyone was able to prevent it, that simple concept, prove the truth, became a court order for a DNA test. That's when everything shifted. At first, Kody treated it like an insult, another attack from people who didn't understand plural marriage. But when his lawyers called and said, "You'll need to appear in person," even Kody hesitated. For a man who prided himself on control, the thought of science questioning his family shook something deep. He reminded himself it was just a gesture, a rumor to be silenced, a test that would confirm his faith, his love, his legacy. But deep within he knew, this wasn't about confirming the truth, it was about revealing it. And if you find that dramatic, wait till you hear what followed. Because when the door to that courtroom opened, it wasn't lawyers that appeared. It was ghosts. The day the Browns entered court, nothing about them resembled the family America believed it had known. It was meant to be a private hearing. Hushed, closed, mundane. But when the Brown family surname showed up on that docket, privacy was out of the question. Paparazzi cameras camped like vultures around the courthouse, lenses trained on the doors that previously swung open to their living rooms. It was chilly inside. Marble floors rang with footsteps. But what echoed wasn't just footsteps. It was history closing in. Kody entered first. His tie was too tight, his jaw too set, and his eyes, they were not defiant anymore, they were searching. Meri followed him, quiet and withdrawn, her hands holding a notebook that she would never open. Christine walked a few feet away from them, steady but inscrutable. Janelle lagged behind, serene, unruffled, but her gaze flicked from comer to comer, sweeping across faces as if anticipating treason to emerge from the darkness. And last, Robin, the newest of the wives, the one who'd been presumed the favorite, brought up the rear, her mascara already smeared before the hearing even started. You could sense the tension bearing down on that courtroom, like weight that wasn't there. They no longer resembled a family. They resembled witnesses. The judge walked in. A gavel came down. Quiet. And among that quiet, the last 15 years of their existence seemed to have been reduced to one moment. A moment that would shatter everything. Hold with me here. Because this is where everyone stopped pretending. Kody shied from their gazes. Particularly Christine's. The tension between them crackled, as if something unsaid was clamoring to be released. The lawyers opened the case abstract. A family case involving verification of identity and parentage. Those words sliced through the air thinner than the crack of the gavel. Even the clerk's voice shook. For years the people had complained that the show was staged. But what was about to happen wasn't on script. It was real, on paper, filed of public record. And as the judge looked at that one envelope on his desk, he spoke softly. When truth enters a courtroom, lies tend to run out of places to hide. If you believe that line was just poetic, stick with me. Because in a minute or two, you'll see how right he was. The envelope was sealed. Kody's attorney asked that the results be kept secret, in the name of privacy and emotional sensitivity. But Christine's lawyer objected. If the truth has a bearing on family rights, it should be heard in open court. The crowd gasped. That was the first public indication that this was not a misunderstanding. This was a challenge. As the judge sighed and leaned forward, you could almost sense the world holding its breath. And then, just as the documents were about to be opened, Meri whispered something, barely loud enough to be heard, but quite loud enough for those around her to catch. He always said love was stronger than blood. I guess we'll see. And that's where the storm really started. Just as the envelope was about to be opened, time itself paused, as if even the truth was reluctant to be spoken. No one said anything. The buzz of the fluorescent lights hung in the silence like static, and each heartbeat in that courtroom rang too loudly to be ignored. Kody sat rigidly, his fingers drumming on the wooden table, not out of impatience, but out of fear. The judge's hand hovered over the envelope, the seal still intact, the air thick enough to suffocate on. For once in a lifetime, Kody wasn't acting. There were no TLC cameras to enchant, no spinning heads to spin the story. There was merely the man, the paper, and the potential that his world, his whole sense of self as a father, was about to crumble before the individuals he once referred to as his wives. Bear with me, because this is where memory and what actually occurred begin to blur. As the judge shuffled papers, Kody's thoughts flashed back, not ahead. He saw Christine holding a newborn, smiling through exhaustion. He saw Janelle, patient and calm, teaching toddlers how to spell their last name. He saw Meri's tears the day she learned she couldn't have more children, and how she told herself faith would fill the gap. And he saw Robin, the woman who made him believe he still had time to build something perfect. Each image flashed like lightning, all smiles now laced with suspicion, each family meal replayed like testimony. Was any of it ever genuine, or was everything constructed on a foundation that biology was soon to destroy? The judge talked at last. Mr. Brown, before I open this, do you have anything you wish to say? The inquiry hung there like a challenge of bravery. Kody swallowed hard, his tone low, almost buried in the room. Everything I ever wanted was for my kids to know I loved them, no matter what the world told them. Meri's eyes welled up with tears. She didn't even bother to wipe away. Christine gazed down, her fingers winding the ring she hadn't worn in years. Janelle leaned back, breathing slowly, as if she'd been ready for this moment all along. And Robin, she just gazed at the envelope, pressed her lips together, like she already guessed what was to happen. The judge nodded once. The tearing of paper echoed through the room, slow, but deliberate, final. This is it, Kody whispered to himself, almost. The clerk presented a single sheet. The judge's eyes read the lines. His brow knitted, then relaxed, then hardened entirely. For a moment, it seemed as though even he didn't want to read what he was seeing. If your heart's pounding at the moment, wait it out, because what followed would not only tell the truth, it would redefine what family could mean for each individual in that room. The judge cleared his throat. Everyone leaned in, and then truce. The ripping of that paper was louder than any of the words ever uttered that day. The room held its breath. The judge looked down, his fingers running along each line of the report, as if he was looking for a softer version of the truth. There wasn't one. He breathed slowly in, then spoke. The DNA analysis, he said slowly, is a non-paternal match for one of the listed minors. For a moment, no one stirred. Not even the cameras had the courage to click. The words floated in the air. Non-paternal match. So clinical, so technical, and so devastating. Kody's mouth was open, but nothing emerged. His body surged forward a little, as though attempting to outrun the significance. Christine's head dropped. Janelle muttered something that no one heard. And Meri, she just stared straight ahead, tears trapped in her lashes, frozen. Stay with me. Because this wasn't just about blood, this was about all that came after. The judge read on, explaining the test's chain of custody, the verification of accuracy, the scientific jargon that attempted to render betrayal mathematical, each word a hurt. And then there was the question everyone dreaded. Would the parties care to know which child is at issue? Kody gasped, shaking his head. No, he whispered, so softly almost no one could hear. But the lawyers did not agree. Christine raised her eyes, quiet, even almost fatalistic, and spoke low. It's done, we might as well hear it. The judge nodded, glancing at the paper. Based on the findings, he started, the DNA sample we tested is not consistent with Mr. Kody Brown's genetic makeup. The courtroom rustled, a chair was scraped. Kody's hands shook on the table. He looked down, breathing unsteadily, as though he was suppressing a scream that would never be voiced. The judge refolded the paper, cautiously this time, as though he was putting the truth away, wishing that if he wasn't seeing it, it would hurt any less. But nothing could make it not be real. Kody glanced up, his face white, eyes glassy. This is not right, he whispered. His attorney put a hand on his arm, but he shook her off. I was there. I held that child when they were born. He trailed off, swallowing hard, aware that no one was disagreeing with him now. Because truth doesn't disagree. It just resides. Silent, immobile, conclusive. If you think the silence was suffocating, wait until you witness what replaced it. Christine took a deep breath and stood up. No words, no fury, only a quiet sort of strength that required no defense. And in that moment, all eyes turned to her. The woman who had been accused of abandoning, blamed for shattering the family, now standing taller than ever before. She didn't say a word to Kody. She didn't have to. Her silence spoke louder than any words. You constructed this world. You constructed it on lies. And that's when the real collapse began. Sometimes families don't explode. They quietly crumble, one secret at a time. The courtroom emptied slowly. Whispers clung to the air like smoke after a fire. Christine walked out first, chin lifted, eyes forward, not triumphant, not bitter, just free. Behind her, Kody sat hunched in the wooden chair, his eyes fixed on the table, as if it could give him a better result if he stared hard enough. Meri lingered behind as well, stiff in her seat, as if reality had petrified her. Her hands danced around her necklace, twisting it, untwisting it, the only indication she was still there. And then softly, nearly too softly to be heard, she whispered, "It was never the DNA. It was the loyalty. That's your retention line." Because at that moment, the story quit being one about science and became one about survival. The wind whipped Christine's hair as she walked to her car outside the courthouse. Several paparazzi had assembled, cameras flashing, calling her name, but she didn't flinch. For once she wasn't acting for reality television. She was living her reality, unvarnished, unpretended, frightening, but genuine. Back inside, Kody got to his feet. "I want that test redone," he said, his voice breaking. His lawyer nodded feebly, but the deed was done. The headlines were already shaping up. By nightfall, the news had leaked. Sister wives court shock. DNA test unveils paternity mystery. Blogs, forums, fan sites, all lit like fire. Screenshots of court papers circulated. Footage of the Brown family's past episodes was reposted with such headings as the clues we overlooked. Kody dialed Robin first. Her phone voice was tremulous, in command, the kind of voice one has when one is not going to let panic get the better of them. "We'll get through this," she told him. "We always do." But this was no other TLC storyline. There was no producer to cut, no editor to tone down the edges. He hung up the phone. His image glared back through the black window. Older, angrier, diminutive, the patriarch who had had 4 wives now stood alone with only the ringing of his own choices to keep him company. Christine meanwhile sat in her kitchen, hands cradling a tea that had long since cooled. Her phone rang incessantly. Texts from family, fans, even strangers. One jumped out. It said, "You didn't shatter the family, you simply ceased to pretend it was intact to begin with." She smiled weakly. For the first time, that remark didn't hurt. But what all of them still didn't know, not Kody, not Meri, not even Christine, was that the test had uncovered something far deeper than bloodlines. A second report. A sealed envelope. And within it, a revelation that could dismantle what little was left of the Brown family legacy. Because sometimes the DNA doesn't only reveal who belongs, it reveals who never did. Just when everyone thought the truth was out, another truth was waiting, silently sealed in a second envelope. The courthouse was deserted now. Only a handful of clerks rustled papers under dim lights, the sound of footsteps dwindling down extensive marble corridors. On the judge's desk was a lone folder, beige, labeled confidential. It wasn't in the public record. Not yet. Within that folder was a second DNA report. A secondary confirmation test requested weeks before. One no one, including the attorneys, knew about. The clerk stopped, reading the label on the envelope. Same family, same case number. Different child. Stay close, because this was where the story shifted from scandal to something considerably more sinister. The next morning, Christine took a call. It was her attorney. His voice was guarded, reserved. "Christine, there's another filing. We just received word. The court is requesting a sealed hearing." Christine's world came to a standstill. "Another DNA test?" "Yes. And it's not about you this time." That's when the walls that had started to crumble around her began to close in once more. For weeks, she had enjoyed the calm of release, freedom from the turmoil that used to characterize her life. Now, all that was surging back. Kody, meanwhile, had retreated to his home with Robin, barricading himself from the press. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten much. He spent hours replaying old episodes, searching for moments where everything started to slip away, like maybe the answers had always been hidden between commercial breaks. That's when his phone rang. It was his lawyer. "You'll need to return to court tomorrow. There's a development." "What now?" "Another DNA report. This one has to do with Robin's side of the family." Kody's hand hung suspended in midair. He gazed into space, as though the words hadn't fully registered yet. "Robin's?" "Yes. The court indicates it has to do with lineage confirmation requested by an earlier attorney. Custody paperwork discrepancies." This was not another test. This was a test nobody knew even existed. And the roots of it went way back into the family's history. That evening, the Brown family sat in silence. Robin paced. Kody sat on the couch, arms crossed on his knees, fingers knotted tightly together. Who would even make that order? She breathed. Who would act in secret? Kody said nothing, because secretly he already knew. Meri, it must have been her. She'd been the one snooping, asking questions, trying to figure out the turned alliances and broken trust. And though everyone assumed she had kept quiet, Meri had secretly filed her own petition, requesting the court rehear records pertaining to their children's legal guardianship. Christine learned the same evening. She wasn't mad. She was weary. Weary of secrets piled on top of secrets. Weary of seeing everyone pretend they were still one big happy family. "This is what occurs," she whispered to her sister on the phone. "When you stay too long in a house constructed on silence, even whispers become thunder." But the morning after, when the second envelope was opened at last in court, nobody was prepared for what it contained, because in that report wasn't another discrepancy. It was a timeline contradiction, a discovery that not only challenged paternity, challenged the whole history of the family. And for the first time, it seemed as if someone had been lying, not about the identity of the father, but whether the child was born at all. Sometimes the biggest secret isn't who someone is. It's when their story truly began. The second DNA envelope sat open on the judge's desk. The courtroom was smaller this time. No cameras, no reporters, just lawyers, family, and silence. The judge cleared his throat, voice low but steady. The test result is valid. But there's a discrepancy in the submitted documents. Specifically, the birth record. Christine's breath caught. Meri leaned forward, eyes sharp. Kody frowned, confused. The judge continued. The date of birth on the state record does not match the date recorded in the family's private filings or TLC documentation. For a long moment, nobody understood. Then the implication hit. Someone somewhere had changed a birth date. If you're thinking that sounds small, remember, in a family built on control, even one false date can rewrite everything. Christine whispered under her breath. But, why? The judge handed over the supporting documentation. There it was. A certificate recorded 2 years after the real birth, signed not by a hospital, but a private notary, and the name under guardian. Robin Brown. The courtroom murmured softly. Robin's face went white. That's impossible, she said. That's a mistake. But the paper was indifferent to feelings. The paper had ink, signatures, and a fact that couldn't be excised from an episode. Meri's attorney stood up calmly. Your Honor, my client's request for re-examination came from discrepancies, she observed with prior legal submissions. She did not expect this. Everyone looked at Meri. Her voice was shaking but resolute. I wasn't trying to kill anyone's things. I just wanted the truth. I thought, if we were being honest about everything else, then why not here? Kody slammed his fist on the table. Behind us? Behind you? Meri did not blink. You went behind all of us for years. Kody, you just referred to it as leadership. That zinger struck like lightning, and it is one of the most widely replayed lines in the show's web history. The judge interrupted, attempting to bring order back. But tension had already broken open. What followed shut even him up. The court clerk had submitted a notarized affidavit, a letter from a past family associate, several years old. The affidavit established that the revised birth record was organized behind the scenes on behalf of someone attempting to protect the show's image. And alongside that declaration was a printed email exchange between a representative from TLC and the Brown family's lawyer at the time. Christine's hand shook as she read the sentence. Keep the story simple. Family unity is our best brand asset. The reality hit like a bomb. This was no longer just a family secret. It was a show cover-up. Christine slowly turned to face Kody. You knew. Kody shook his head. I didn't. You always knew. You just didn't think it would be revealed. The room descended into a thick, stifling silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Even Robin's tears could not soften what was revealed. And yet, what they didn't know, what nobody in that courtroom yet knew, was that this secret timeline wasn't just the conclusion of something. It was the start of a new betrayal, because the birth certificate wasn't the only document that had been altered. The financial records associated with that date had been tampered with as well, and those numbers would expose a secret money trail that could unravel everything. Every secret leaves fingerprints, and in this family they were printed on bank statements. The courtroom was silent, except for the faint hum of the ceiling lights. The judge's assistant placed a stack of documents on the table. Thick, stapled, marked financial records. Subpoenaed. Christine leaned forward. Meri's jaw tightened. Even Kody appeared uncertain for the first time. Not angry, not defensive, just fearful. The judge started, after the revelation of timeline inconsistency. The court asked for confirmation of related trust and media payments linked to the joint ventures of the family. He paused. We uncovered discrepancies. This is where the tension shifts. The betrayal is not emotional anymore. It's financial. Christine's attorney rifled through the pages. Dates, amounts, routing numbers all into one account. An account under a shell company. And what company? Brown Family Heritage LLC. The listed signatory Kody Brown. Secondary authorized user. Robin Brown. Christine whispered, "What is this?" Her lawyer replied softly, "It's a private fund. A diversion account. Approximately $500,000 passed through it in 2 years." Kody's eyes narrowed. "That's production money." It was for. But the lawyer cut him off. Then why was it referred to as Family Wellness Fund and attached to the changed birth certificate's tax reports? The room went cold. Christine covered her mouth with her hand. Robin dropped her head, saying in a whisper, "Oh my God." Meri slowly leaned back, awareness spreading like a shadow. "That's where it disappeared," she whispered. "That's why the trust account was always short." Kody got up. "Come on. You don't get it. The pressure we were under. TLC was exerting influence. The family was breaking apart. The money." But Christine interrupted him. Tone calm and firm. "The money didn't break apart, Kody. We did. You just took care to have a cushion when we fell." And in an instant, the narrative had moved from sadness to proof, from feeling to revelation. The checks documented payments described as image management, consulting fees and narrative protection, close to $500,000. All secretly channeled through Robin's LLC, signed off on by Kody. The judge's voice was measured but indisputably icy. "Mr. Brown, did you know these funds were dispersed without the other family members' permission?" Kody paused. "I was informed that it was part of production budgeting." "By whom?" "It came through TLC's business liaison. They told me it was normal." Christine's attorney referenced one line on the bottom of the ledger, a transfer titled Reputational Recovery. Post-separation. It was 3 weeks after Christine formally revealed her exit. "You got paid for damage control," the attorney explained. "You profited from the divorce." Christine closed her eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. "You sold out on destroying us." Kody did not answer, because there was nothing left to protect. But if you believe this was the end of it, it wasn't. This was only the tip of a much deeper cover-up. Because immediately after the financial documents were read, a court aide slipped the judge another sealed document, this time from TLC's legal department. He read it in silence, eyes furrowing with each sentence. When he finally did look up, his face was white. "Seems," he spoke slowly, "that the network knew about the discrepancies and authorized the payments." Gasps traveled across the courtroom. The story had just expanded beyond one family. Now, it wasn't merely Kody and Christine standing trial. It was the whole machine that stood behind them. And the second session, that's when the system strikes back. Because when cash and reputation meet, the truth is the first casualty. When the truth becomes too expensive, the networks no longer call it truth. They refer to it as damage control. The trial was adjourned, but the battle was just heating up. By nightfall, headlines blazed across every tabloid and entertainment blog. TLC under fire for DNA cover-up, in sister-wife scandal. The news went viral within a few hours. Clips, commentary, leaked documents, all flying farther than anyone could keep up. Christine did not utter a word. She had no need to. Her silence was louder than any public statement. Meanwhile, Kody's attorney issued a short statement deeming the reports as misleading and exaggerated. But already, the public had picked sides. Then, just when the backlash was at its highest, TLC finally spoke out. A well-worded statement popped up on their official site. TLC upholds the highest standards of ethics within our productions. The recent claims against the Brown family are based on misunderstood information and do not represent the integrity of our staff or programming. It was succinct. Refinement, exactly what you'd expect from a billion-dollar brand. But behind every polished statement, there's always the one draft that was never meant to be seen. Because 2 days later, a leak surfaced. An internal email chain between TLC executives and the Brown family's legal team. The subject line read, "Crisis Management Strategy. Brown Family Paternity Story." The emails revealed that producers knew about the DNA results weeks before they went public. They had argued how to control the story in order to maintain viewer empathy and series continuity. In one of the messages, a high-ranking executive penned, "We can't allow this to overshadow the family's brand journey. The audience craves redemption, not scandal." Christine read the line 3 times in shock. "Redemption? not scandal. They hadn't merely videotaped her life, they'd rewritten it. In the meantime, Kody's PR consultant was already spinning it. He showed up on a podcast, smiling guardedly, voice silky. People forget this is entertainment. Not everything is literal. There's editing, context, things are dramatized. The host was direct. Are you saying the DNA results aren't real? He chuckled quietly. I'm saying reality TV isn't always reality. That one line took down the internet. Forums, reaction channels, and fan pages went crazy. Was it staged? Was it fake? Did TLC stage an entire family's crisis for viewership? Christine finally came forward. Not in press statements, but in one raw post. I didn't sign up for fiction. I signed up to tell the truth. Even when it hurt. The post went viral within minutes. Millions of likes. Thousands of comments. Some supportive, some outraged, but all viewing. Kody, on the other hand, doubled down. In a leaked video inside his home, he ranted, "They're making a villain out of me. I did everything for the family." The cameras were there before the trouble, not afterwards. Robin was standing next to him, clearly traumatized. "It's not supposed to end like this," she breathed. But the public no longer gave a hoot who was in the right. They cared who lied more convincingly. The network panicked, bringing in crisis management experts and re-editing future specials. They took off-season episodes off streaming sites. They substituted descriptions with ambiguous synopses. And then supped the most surprising twist of all. TLC promised a new show, Life After the Browns. Untold Truths, a docuseries intended to set the record straight. But Christine wasn't included. Neither was Meri. The truth again was being redefined. And just when the audience believed the show was done, Christine pulled off one final stunt twist, one that would finally regain the power. Because sometimes, the best revenge is telling your story with the people who benefited from it. Sometimes, freedom isn't going away. It's going back, standing upright, and telling your story in your own words. It had been 3 weeks since the courtroom frenzy. The network refutations, the viral tempest. But Christine Brown hadn't made a public statement, not a word. Until now. On a mellow Friday evening, a new thumbnail popped up on her newly created YouTube channel. A brief title, "The Truth You Weren't Supposed to Hear." No production crew, no network logos. Only Christine, in her living room, natural light streaming through the window. No editing, no makeup. She breathed deeply before she spoke. For years I believed silence was peace. But silence, it's just another sort of cage. Her eyes were steady. Her voice even. Everyone has heard the gossip. The DNA test. The money. The lies. But you haven't heard what led up to it. The promises. The manipulation. The fear. Retention line. And like that, the tale that others attempted to bury began to breathe once more. Christine brandished a small envelope. The same type used in court. This is the second report. The one that turned everything upside down. But I'm not revealing it to condemn anyone. I'm revealing it because you need to hear what truth sounds like. She spread the paper out and read aloud the last conclusion. All tests confirmed. Discrepancies consistent with intentional alteration of public records. She stared straight into the camera. That's not just a matter of hiding a secret. Someone rewrote history. The footage then shifted to photographs. Not staged, not aestheticized, plain raw screenshots. Emails, accounting records, bank statements with lines highlighted reading Family Wellness Fund. Consulting $250,000. Then Christine spoke again. Voice stronger now. That money, that $500,000, was going to take care of our children, our houses, our health. And it was spent defending a TV image. An image that made us strangers for money. The internet fell silent, then erupted. In 24 hours, the video reached 10 million views. TLC stated no comment. Fan pages swarmed with hashtags. #Christine Speaks and #The Real Sister Wife. Even Meri posted the video with only one caption. This is what truth looks like. And then the shocking surprise. One last secret. Christine had kept until the end. Before I left, she whispered, I discovered one more document, a transfer order from the network's legal fund to the very same LLC account. Guess who signed it? She hesitated. Not Kody, not Robin. A producer. The screen flickered with the initials. TM, the same initials that stood in dozens of stolen email chains. Christine went on, her voice even but shattering. Perhaps this was never about family after all. Perhaps it was about who gets to write the narrative and who finally gets to reclaim it. The video concluded with her gazing directly into the camera. Not bitter, not shattered, just liberated. To all who witnessed, who believed, or who doubted, thank you. Because truth doesn't require permission to exist. It just requires someone brave enough to speak it aloud. And that's when it was no longer a scandal, but history. The following morning, media sources worldwide referred to it as the Sister Wives expose that revolutionized reality TV forever. TLC silently suspended production of all spin-offs related to it. Christine signed with an independent documentary studio, not to tell more lies, but to document what healing looks like, once all the cameras stop rolling. At the end of it all, the DNA test didn't just verify who was sharing blood, it verified who was sharing truth. Families can break, networks can spin, money can disappear, but the moment that somebody tells the truth, you can't unhear it. This wasn't the end of Sister Wives. This was the day it became real at last. When truth finally reaches the surface, it doesn't whisper, it shatters everything it comes in contact with. The next day after Christine's confession, the world woke up differently. Social media blew up before dawn. Every news network, every talk show, every reality gossip blog, overwhelmed with one headline: DNA test destroys the Sister Wives legacy. The Brown family had been the embodiment of unity, love, and non-traditional faith for more than a decade. But in an instant, that idealized image shattered, like a glass castle struck by a rock. Fans who had once loved their tale now cried out for explanations. Segments of past TLC shows were replayed, analyzed, slowed down frame by frame, folks seeking clues, patterns, anything that indicated the deception before it was made known. We should have seen it, one user commented. They were breaking long before Christine left. The court's silence did nothing to assist. TLC's silence did nothing to assist. And Kody's silence that made it worse. He disappeared. No interviews. No comments. Not even a post. The man who used to adore the camera more than comfort now hid behind drawn curtains, shunning the world he used to dominate. Sources claimed he'd been told by lawyers not to say anything. But others whispered a truer secret, that perhaps for the first time in his life, Kody had no idea what to say. Because when your whole kingdom is founded on the fantasy of control, the instant reality surfaces, silence is your sole defense. While Robin's world also started to break apart, paparazzi trailed her outside a law building, flashbulbs exploding against her tear-stained face. She kept her head down, clutching her bag like it was the only thing that remained unscathed. Reporters shouted from the other side of the parking lot, Robin, did you know about the money? Were you involved? She refused to respond. She simply got into her car and drove away, the click of shutters pounding behind her like specters. Christine, however, did not hide. She stood against the storm, bare, unbridled, unafraid. She went on air that night, her tone quiet but unwavering. The truth isn't meant to make everybody feel comfortable. It's meant to set us free. Millions of people watched within hours. Comments poured in. Women from around the globe posting their own experiences of walking away, of escaping, of starting anew. Christine's words became scandal, then symbol. And somewhere Meri silently watched that livestream. Her eyes welled with tears. Not jealousy, but awareness. She posted a picture later that night, an old photo of herself and Christine, smiling from years ago, captioned simply, "We were told to smile. Now we're learning to speak." That post alone hit over 1 million likes. Not because it was polished, but because it was real. And in a world addicted to perfect filters, nothing travels faster than unfiltered truth. TLC tried to contain the explosion. Boardroom meetings stretched late into the night. Emails leaked. Executives grappled with whether to yank the show or battle the narrative. But ultimately, one in-house memo spoke volumes. We cannot continue the Sister Wives brand without the sisterhood itself. Production was formally halted. The network yanked Next Chapter from streaming in mere days. Fans woke to discover their beloved show swapped out with a single message on the TLC website. This content is temporarily unavailable. But everyone knew it wasn't temporary. It was done. When the dust settled, Christine emerged from the storm a stronger woman than she ever had been before. She made the announcement of establishing a foundation for women leaving abusive environments. When she made her first public appearance, Janelle was by her side. Two women who had once shared a husband, now sharing a cause. Meri launched a podcast called Unscripted. Its first show started with the lines, "I spent years living someone else's story. This time I'm writing my own." The irony? That podcast went more viral than any TLC show ever did. And as the credits of their former reality empire dissolved, one thing remained absolute. The tale that once marketed millions on fantasy was now motivating millions with reality. Christine once stated, "Freedom isn't leaving. Freedom is knowing who you are when the lights go out." And now, those lights, the ones that documented their lives for years, were finally extinguished. But for the first time, she wasn't in the dark dot. Because what came next wasn't about courtrooms, DNA, or TV contracts. It was about rebirth. And that's where our story really begins. When the cameras stop rolling and the truth stays, that's when the real story begins. The headlines dissipated. The lawsuits dwindled. The world went on, or so it appeared. But for those who lived within that narrative, everything would change forever. Christine no longer awoke to call times and camera crews. She awoke to sunlight, to quiet, to tranquility. She used to say she was afraid of what life would be like without the show. Now she couldn't even imagine returning. Kody disappeared from public life. The man who used to have 4 wives, unlimited cameras and control, now had none of those. Friends said they spotted him walking by himself some mornings, head down, hands deep in his jacket pockets. Perhaps he was reflecting on what went wrong. Or perhaps, he finally understood it wasn't ever about being right. Meri started over again. Her podcast Unscripted reached #1 in several countries. Not because it was scripted, but because it was horribly human. Every episode was raw, silent, and honest. She talked about loss, religion, and what it is to begin anew when the world only recalls your failure. Janelle, ever the rock, did find a different sort of peace. She remained near to her children, guiding them through life beyond fame. No longer secrets. No more scripts. Just family, flawed and real. Because sometimes, healing isn't revenge. It's rebuilding. Slowly, quietly, honestly. The TLC days were over. But the legacy, the lessons had only just started. What began as a DNA scandal had grown into something much larger. A mirror held up to every single person who's ever been trapped in somebody else's narrative. Christine once stood in a courtroom, shaking, battling for truth. Now she was on stage, firm, peaceful, beaming, speaking to a room full of women who identified with her suffering. They said love equals obedience, she told them. But actual love begins when you cease obeying fear. The room descended into weeping and clapping. And for one instant it wasn't about television. It wasn't about Kody. It wasn't even about the sister wives. It was about every voice that remained quiet for too long. In the meantime, the old videos of their show, the laughter, the meals, the fights, all became fragments of a past which taught us something, that even the most lovely families can be constructed on brittle lies, and even the most shattered hearts can rebuild stronger. And if you've ever stood in front of the mirror and wanted to say, "I can't start over," remember, they did. Years later, Christine was interviewed. If you could go back and change something, what would it be? She was quiet, smiled gently, and responded, "Nothing. Because without the breaking, I would have never learned to be free." That phrase became the pulse of a movement. Her organization expanded, her life spoke to millions, and her bravery became the motivation thousands of others selected truth over secrets. As the music mounts and the documentary fades, the final image is seen. This was never just a scandal. It was a revolution in disguise. Breaking free, the untold story of life after polygamy. And just as the screen goes dark, The narrator speaks. Because sometimes the DNA that makes us isn't the one in our veins. It's the bravery we leave behind when we finally choose to live our truth. What do you think? Was this the end of a family, or the beginning of freedom? Let's discuss in the comments below. And if you've ever stood in front of the mirror and said, I can't begin again, remember, they did. Years down the line, Christine was interviewed and asked, if you could turn back the clock and change one thing, what would it be? She smiled quietly, paused, and said, nothing. Because without the shattering, I would have never understood how to be free. Those words are the pulse of a movement. Her organization expanded, her tale motivated millions, and her bravery became the inspiration for thousands of others to choose truth over silence. As the music builds and the film dissolves, the last frame displays, this was never just a scandal. It was a revolution in disguise. Breaking free, the untold story of life after polygamy. And just as the screen is about to go black, the narrator adds, because sometimes the DNA that makes us isn't the one in our blood. It's the courage we inherit when we finally choose to live our truth. What do you think? Was this the end of a family, or the beginning of freedom? Let's chat in the comments below. When the credits roll, and the sound dies down, we're left with one plain fact. Freedom doesn't always present itself in firework fashion. Sometimes freedom looks like one person walking away, and never looking back. Christine didn't walk out of a marriage. She walked out of a system designed to silence her voice. And when she did, she gave the world permission to ask, what if the life we were told to live was never really ours? Because that's the core of this story. Not the courtroom, not the DNA, not the scandal. It's about the bravery it takes to end surviving and begin living truthfully. We saw a family that once believed in unity crumble before our eyes. But perhaps, that crumbling wasn't a tragedy. Perhaps it was a rebirth. Because sometimes breaking free doesn't ruin your story. It finally allows you to write it yourself. And as the Sister Wives empire looks back on history, one thing is certain, Christine, Meri, and Janelle didn't merely leave a show behind. They left behind the roles they were never destined to play. They showed us that truth will always be louder than reputation, and that no empire, no contract, no husband can dictate who you are supposed to be. So as you finish reading this story tonight, keep this in mind. You don't owe the world your silence. You owe yourself your freedom. And perhaps, this isn't the end of their story. It's the beginning of yours. This is Breaking Free, the untold story of life after polygamy. If something resonated with you tonight, leave your thoughts below, because every comment, every story, every voice creates the next chapter of truth.